Well, never mind all that stuff, because COVID also taught Sunny Hostin how to get her groceries delivered. Yeah, I know, amazing. But that means it's time for...
Living your life and you're feeling low. You don't know what is true. You don't know what's true. So you quick flip through the channels to watch Sunny on The View. Oh my God, the stuff she says is dumb. Where the hell they get this woman from? She's a host who's always crass and lame, with lots of nonsense to proclaim.
Sunny Hostin completely unraveled, and the tension in the studio got so thick you could almost slice it with a knife. This wasn't just confusion, it was Greg Gutfeld striking with surgical precision, each line landing like a lightning bolt, sending sparks across the set. Her contradictions spilled out like a dam breaking, turning what should have been a simple segment into a full-on meltdown in real time. Fans who'd watched for years sensed it coming, but even they couldn't prepare for the impact. And when the cameras finally cut, the room was left frozen, stuck in a stunned silence that hung heavier than any word could.
Make fun of The View a lot, but that's only because they keep talking. Those hens are always clucking. They get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, and then I get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, except on purpose. But every now and then, one of those dingbats inadvertently says something that reveals modern liberal thought so perfectly it deserves further study. You know, like a weird serpent that washed up on the beach and you want to poke it with a stick.
Sunny finally snapped, way past the usual moments of tension viewers are used to when things get even slightly off script. This time, the meltdown happened in brutal, crystal-clear detail, live for millions to see. This wasn't your typical chaos, it was a full-blown emotional derailment, sparked the second Greg Gutfeld exposed more contradictions in minutes than the show had faced in decades. The moment he spoke, the studio cracked, and Sunny's polished confidence fell apart faster than anyone could have predicted, creating a scene you simply couldn't look away from.
So, Sunny, I bet you haven't been in a supermarket since COVID for about 3 years.
I haven't been in a supermarket since COVID. For about 3 years. That's when I discovered Instacart, and I give them a big tip because they don't always pay their people well, and it's so that's been an issue, I think, for the company. But man, you can get toiletries, you can get fire logs. You know those big bounty towels you don't want to carry.
Those from Costco.
Somebody else goes.
Fire logs? She had to tell the audience that she tips big because even she knows she sounds insufferable. Hey, I'm an but at least I tip.
Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. The episode started like so many others on The View. Smiles ready, agreement expected, the room humming with that familiar approval loop. Sunny Hostin took her usual seat as the table's legal authority, delivering statements that sounded commanding but leaned heavily on emotion over logic. Her arguments were wrapped in confidence and intensity, yet beneath it all, they were the same recycled talking points. Style over substance. That's exactly why the moment she faltered hit so hard. When the spotlight shifted, there was nowhere left to hide.
Hostin's obsession with race gets thrown back in her face. Today's video comes to us from Sunny Hostin. Sounds like a town. We're in Sunny Hostin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sunny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from Europe. Here's how she took the news.
For anyone not familiar with The View, picture a political comment section come to life, amped up by studio lights and shielded by applause. Opinions fly fast, confidence stays sky high, and real depth rarely survives a second glance. Sunny fits right in, playing the steady voice of reason until someone actually challenges her. Then, simple counterpoints turn into full-blown drama, and emotion drowns out logic. What should be a discussion becomes a confrontation. Nuance vanishes, and the show's environment, where certainty beats accuracy and volume beats clarity, sets the stage for a moment that could only explode.
Wow. I'm a little bit in shock. I just always thought of myself as Puerto Rican, you know, half Puerto Rican. I didn't think I was my family was originally from Spain and slaveholders.
Yeah. So how are you feeling, my friend?
I think it's actually pretty interesting that my husband and I have shared roots.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that. And I think it's great for our children to know this information. I guess it's a fact of life that this is how some people made their living, on the backs of others.
Fact of life. Interesting change of tune. For more, we go to our chief Sunny Hostin correspondent for a reaction.
Everything changed the moment Gutfeld stepped in. His presence shattered the show's usual rhythm, bringing an energy that thrives on exposing contradictions instead of glossing over them. Greg doesn't do rehearsed sound bites, he says what everyone else tiptoes around. Sunny walked right into it, clearly forgetting sarcasm still exists. As he methodically laid out her conflicting statements, her argument crumbled under its own weight. She called for calm discussion while repeatedly tossing extreme labels herself, a balance that only works if no one pushes back. But Greg didn't stop. He kept pulling examples with relentless precision, showing how outrage magically turns into context whenever her favorite figures are involved. With every point, a pressure mounted, and contradictions that had long flown under the radar became impossible to defend.
Oh, I'm gonna milk this till the end of time. You're right. Anytime she says something stupid, I'm gonna go, slave owner! Kat, I just watched that. That's the second time I've watched that. She was tipped off beforehand, right? Because they had to tell her before, so she had time to regroup. They wouldn't just surprise.
Really?
Do you think? No?
I don't know. I feel like she could have maybe done better. Okay, here's the
Greg Gutfeld laid it all out with calm, relentless precision, showing how Sunny's outrage flips on and off depending on who's speaking. The moment a conservative challenges her, fury ignites instantly. But when an ally stumbles on basic principles or twists the Constitution, that same fury disappears, replaced with excuses and vague justifications. The contrast was crystal clear, and Greg didn't even need to raise his voice. He just let the pattern speak for itself. Sunny has always demanded accountability from others while shielding those she agrees with, a double standard so predictable it's almost comical. She calls for investigations over old statements when it suits her, yet fiercely defends politicians who can't even navigate basic ethical lines. As Greg methodically pointed it all out, the segment stopped feeling like a debate and started feeling like a live unmasking of contradictions. The audience responded exactly as expected, cheering not because the argument is disproven, but because the exposure was undeniable.
I think that women, white women in particular, want to protect the patriarchy here because it's to their benefit. Yeah. They want to make sure that their husbands do well. They want to make sure that their sons do well. They want to make sure that their children do well. And they want to make sure that they do well. Most of the women in some of these studies are married white women, and they do fall in line with what their husbands are doing.
People have to wonder, where does Sunny Hostin get her opinions?
Yeah.
Like you said, it's obviously from her husband. She has to tell her what to say on The View, because without it, she's got nothing up there.
But in that studio, loyalty often trumps logic. Gutfeld could have laid out an entire timeline of Sunny's past statements side by side, and the reaction would have been the same: dismissal wrapped in moral superiority. Sunny Hostin, who spent years confidently judging millions from her ABC chair, suddenly cracked when someone highlighted how often her own words contradict each other. The shift was shocking. The woman known for handing out harsh judgments now looked completely overwhelmed by the same scrutiny she dishes out daily. It wasn't subtle, it was emotional whiplash, live on air, leaving viewers frozen as it unfolded. What followed felt less like a discussion and more like acrobatics of the heart, authority flipping to vulnerability in seconds, catching everyone off guard. The irony was impossible to miss. Someone so used to calling others out, completely unprepared to be challenged herself. The table reacted instantly. Co-hosts closed ranks, voices softened, expressions turned protective, as if a simple fact check had crossed into forbidden territory.
Joy Behar gets racism. After all, she's been black on Halloween. Yeah. But Joy wasn't there on the show. Apparently Mondays are her days off when she feeds in the pasture. But that is convenient, right? It's like one of my aunts dies every time Brian Kilmeade wants to hang out. Maybe Joy needs a full day to read her hate mail, and that's just from the rest of the cast. So Scott had to deal with Sunny Hostin and her typical self-righteousness.
Instead of facing the contradiction head-on, the moment got spun into something personal, sensitive, fragile, something that needed protecting instead of discussing. Whoopi Goldberg jumped in, steering the conversation toward feelings and intentions, hinting that facts could bend if the emotions were strong enough. The focus shifted from consistency to comfort. Off-camera, producers reportedly treated Sunny's breakdown like a crisis rather than what it really was, a public figure struggling under accountability. This wasn't a personal attack, it was a challenge to logic. Yet the reaction made it clear that criticism itself had become off-limits. For viewers, the contrast was glaring. Sunny, who spent years dishing out public criticism without flinching, suddenly found herself on the receiving end, unraveling live in a way you couldn't ignore. And the moment blew up online because Greg Gutfeld did what no one at that table ever expected. He said the quiet part out loud.
But unlike this chick, we didn't think it was the best thing that could have happened to us. Although it did get Joy Behar to wear a mask. You make me sick. It's funny, her being named Joy is like me being named ugly.
He didn't yell, he didn't insult. He just pointed out what everyone suddenly saw, and Sunny reacted like the truth had hit her like a physical blow. The contrast was brutal. Greg stayed calm and precise, cutting with every word while Sunny fell apart, desperately clutching at her slipping composure. Within minutes, social media exploded. Clips went viral, not because of chaos, but because viewers watched confidence crumble under pressure. Memes followed instantly, some mocking the contradictions, others highlighting how quickly moral certainty disappears when it's tested. Even casual scrollers couldn't look away, drawn in by the irony of someone who lectures endlessly about civility losing control when the mirror turned. Greg's dry, sarcastic delivery landed perfectly, exposing the exhaustion audiences feel, tired of recycled outrage and selective principles.
Did you watch the whole thing or just the parts that I sent you?
I watched it. Obviously, just the parts that you said. Did I watch a whole episode of The View?
No woman can do that unless you're stupid. But
I have a job.
Here's the ththing. How can they call themselves progressives when they keep saying that nothing has progressed? Then it's on them.
Right. I just wish I could have, would have watched if I could, would have been Joy Behar watching that.
Yes.
And being like, I totally made the right call. It was not an accident that they had him there on her day off. Yes. When she was, presented herself as the, expert on systemic racism.
And just like that, The View felt less like a serious discussion table and more like a live comment section under bright studio lights, where disagreement is treated as an attack, and anyone who breaks the script is instantly cast as the villain. The chaos wasn't loud, but it was impossible to forget. The moment spiraled further as the show scrambled to rewrite the story in real time, acting like Sunny's emotional breakdown had nothing to do with years of contradictions and everything to do with protecting women from supposed personal attacks. Suddenly, pointing out inconsistencies became a moral crime, and holding anyone accountable felt like an emergency requiring immediate emotional shielding. The narrative twisted fast, turning clear criticism into something dangerous, even though the truth was still shining through for anyone paying attention. Over time, the show has turned into a padded space where real debate struggles to survive, a place where challenging ideas are hazards and tough questions are avoided like landmines. Instead of discussion, viewers get emotional reassurance dressed up as political conversation, complete with dramatic pauses, heavy sighs, and speeches that feel more like therapy sessions than dialogue.
People have to wonder, where does Sunny Hostin get her opinions?
Yeah.
Like you said, and it's obviously from her husband. She has to tell her what to say in The View, because without it, she's got nothing up there. She's not very bright. But the problem with her is that she went full racist. She injected skin color into a fairly generic behavior seen in all spouses. Regardless of skin color, people marry, they listen to each other, they have something in common with them, they share their political views. She just didn't want to upset her husband by saying her husband makes her do everything, and then she'd have to accuse him of being a racist. because if he told her that this is what white women do, then he's a racist. You see?
The moment logic or consistency even poked its head into the view, the whole setup wobbled, and that day, it finally collapsed. Sonny's reaction didn't come out of nowhere. After years of stacking emotional arguments on shaky reasoning, it almost felt inevitable. And, of course, it couldn't end without a staged narrative flip. As the tension hung thick in the air, Sonny switched gears, delivering an emotional monologue about growth, vulnerability, and personal reflection, an attempt to turn a public unraveling into something inspirational. Her tone softened, her voice cracked, and attention moved away from the contradictions she'd just been exposed to. The goal was obvious: transform discomfort into empowerment before viewers could fully process what they'd seen. Accountability got replaced by emotion, and sincerity was used to distract from substance. The table fell in line, framing the moment as brave honesty instead of a collapse under scrutiny. The discussion pivoted toward healing.
More time to talk. And I thought Will Smith wouldn't let a black man finish. If her IQ was half as high as her smugness, she'd be Einstein. And later it got weird after Whoopi Goldberg asked a question and Sonny chimed in again.
Like real-time damage control. Meanwhile, Gutfeld didn't have to do a thing. No interruptions, no escalation, no shouting. He just sat back, letting the contrast speak for itself. His calm precision amplified everything, highlighting a difference between responding emotionally and responding accurately. Sonny's meltdown became a textbook example of what happens when non-stop exaggeration finally crashes into basic accountability. For years, she built a public persona around certainty, outrage, and moral confidence, but the moment someone calmly exposed her inconsistencies, that image cracked wide open on live TV. It wasn't just awkward, it felt like the collapse of the show's whole approach, exposing how fragile the foundation really is. In a fairer world, The View might have used it as a wake-up call, a chance to rethink how they handle disagreement and allow voices that don't just echo the same opinions. But self-reflection doesn't seem likely. Instead, the show doubled down, surrounding Sonny with comfort, reassurance, and emotional validation, framing the incident as bravery instead of contradiction. At the very least, Sonny's on-air breakdown served as a stark reminder that hypocrisy eventually collapses under its own weight, no matter how well it's hidden behind dramatic speeches and emotional reactions. You can only stretch outrage so far before reality forces a reckoning, and this time it happened in front of millions. The reaction wasn't about politics or debate, it was the collision of fragile confidence, exaggerated certainty, and the immovable wall of consistency that emotion alone can't break. As The View spun its familiar wheel of drama, it landed squarely on public embarrassment, leaving Sonny to face the fallout of a moment that stripped away her polished image in real time. Viewers didn't see a controlled debate or careful exchange. They watched a breakdown, sparked by being confronted with her own words.